Commander Velther stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Watcher, and studied the broken ship floating in the darkness ahead. 23 years he had served in the Quilarian Defense Fleet. 23 years of exploring the galaxy, meeting new species, and maintaining peace across 100 star systems. He thought he had seen everything the universe had to offer. He was wrong. The distress signal had reached them 3 days ago. A human vessel, damaged and drifting near an asteroid field. Velther had read the reports about humans during the long journey here. They were a young species, barely 2 generations into space travel. Their bodies were weak and soft, with no natural armor or weapons. They lived short lives compared to most galactic civilizations. The reports also mentioned something disturbing. Humans spent much of their history fighting and killing each other. "Sir, we're in docking range," his pilot announced. Velther nodded, his reptilian features calm and composed. "Send the rescue team. Be careful. The ship looks unstable." The human vessel, called the New Dawn, was a mess. Large holes decorated its hull. Sections had been blown away completely. Life support was failing. Velther wondered how anyone could still be alive inside. His rescue team reported back within minutes. 47 humans survived, and somehow, impossibly, they had kept their ship running. When Velther met the human captain, he felt immediately curious. Captain Hyan was small by galactic standards, barely reaching his chest. Her skin was smooth and looked fragile. But her eyes held something Velther recognized, the gaze of someone who had faced death and survived. "Thank you for responding to our signal," Hyan said, her voice tired but steady. "We weren't sure anyone would hear us out here. What happened to your ship?" Velther asked. Hyan gestured to a viewing screen showing the asteroid field. "Reactor malfunction during a jump. We came out too close to those rocks. 3 of them hit us before we could move. Lost 38 crew members in the first minute." Velther felt a chill run through him. 38 dead, and she spoke about it so calmly. "I am sorry for your loss. How did you keep the ship functional?" A thin smile crossed Hyan's face. "Duct tape and stubbornness, mostly. Engineer Minji used parts from the damaged sections to patch the working ones. We rerouted power from weapons to life support. Turned off gravity in half the ship to save energy. We made it work." Over the next few hours, Velther toured the New Dawn. What he saw amazed him. The humans had performed repairs that shouldn't be possible. They used materials in ways Velther had never considered. When he found Engineer Minji welding a food processor into the navigation system, he had to ask why. The processor had a working power converter, Minji explained, not looking up from her work. "Navigation needed power more than we needed hot meals. So we improvised." "You are very resourceful," Velther said. Minji shrugged. "We're humans. We make do with what we have. Always have, always will." Velther offered to bring the human survivors aboard his fleet until they could reach the nearest human outpost. Hyan accepted gratefully. The humans transferred to his ships, bringing what little they could salvage. Velther assigned them to support roles, keeping them away from any potential danger. Their fragile biology made them unsuited for the rigorous duties his own people performed. That evening, Velther observed the humans in the mess hall. 2 of them, a pilot named Jinwoo and a medical officer named Nari, sat at a table laughing. Actually laughing. Their ship had nearly killed them, and they found humor in the situation. Curiosity drew Velther closer. He approached their table. "May I join you?" "Of course, Commander," Jinwoo said, gesturing to an empty seat. "We were just talking about the time the reactor started leaking. This is funny to you?" Velther asked, genuinely confused. Nari grinned. "Looking back, kind of." Minji ran through 3 decks in her underwear because the leak happened while she was showering. She fixed it with a wrench and a lot of cursing. If we don't laugh about it, we'd only cry. Velther sat down slowly. Do you not fear death? The humans exchanged glances. Jinwoo spoke first. Of course, we fear death, Commander. We're terrified of it. Every single one of us. But you laugh about nearly dying. Fear doesn't stop what needs doing, Nari said quietly. The reactor was leaking. Someone had to fix it. Minji was closest. She was scared, but she did it anyway. That's just how we are. Velther struggled to understand. His people, the Quilarians, approached danger with careful calculation. They measured risks and minimized casualties. Fear meant retreating to fight another day. But these humans seemed to acknowledge their fear and then ignore it. Later, Velther spoke with Captain Hyan in private. Your people confuse me, he admitted. You know you are fragile. You know space is dangerous. Yet you explore it anyway. Hyan looked out the viewing port at the stars. My grandfather used to say that humans are not built for space. We're not strong like some species. We can't breathe different atmospheres or survive radiation. We die easily. But we have something else. What is that? We refuse to accept our limitations. We look at the impossible and say, watch me anyway. We fall down, we get hurt, we lose people we love. And then we stand up and keep going. Not because we're brave, Commander. Because we're too stubborn to quit. Velther thought about this for a long time that night. The Quilarians had encountered many species. The strong Vrax warriors. The intelligent Lumens. The ancient Deep Burn. Each had their advantages. But humans? They had nothing except their refusal to give up. He wondered if that would be enough. 3 days later, Velther would learn the answer. The Vrax would teach him. And he would discover that stubbornness, combined with the human approach to fear, could be the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. But for now, he simply watched the humans integrate into his crew. They worked hard, complained little, and helped wherever they could. They told jokes about their near-death experiences and made friends with his people. They were strange, these humans. Strange, and perhaps more remarkable than he had first believed. As Velther prepared for sleep that night, he reviewed the human files again. One phrase caught his attention. A human saying, courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than fear. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he would. Soon enough, the humans would show him exactly what that meant. The warning sirens woke Velther from a deep sleep. He rushed to the bridge, his clawed feet gripping the metal floor as the ship shuddered around him. On the main screen, 12 Vrax warships surrounded his fleet like predators circling wounded prey. The Vrax were nightmares made real. Insectoid warriors with exoskeletons harder than steel and weapons that could tear through ship hulls. Every species in the galaxy feared them. They didn't negotiate. They didn't show mercy. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. Report, Velther commanded, sliding into his command chair. His tactical officer, Kreshna, worked frantically at her station. They appeared from nowhere, Commander. Must have been hiding in the nebula. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Velther studied the tactical display. 12 Vrax, ships against his fleet of 7. The numbers weren't good. His people were strategic fighters, not warriors. They fought with precision and planning. But the Vrax? They fought with pure violence. Shields to maximum. Defensive formation Delta. Prepare to retreat on my command. The orders came automatically. Standard Quilarian doctrine. Survive to fight another day. Minimize casualties. Live to protect others later. But a voice interrupted his thoughts. Commander, with respect, we should attack. Velther turned to see Taiyang, the human tactical officer, standing at his station. The young human looked nervous but determined. Attack? Velther repeated. We are outnumbered. We are, Taiyang agreed. But look at their formation. They're arrogant. They think we'll run. If we hit them hard and fast, we can break through. And lose ships in the process, Velther said. No, we follow protocol. Captain Hyan's voice came through the CUM system. Velther, the Vraks are charging weapons. If we run, they'll shoot us in the back. At least if we fight, we face them. Before Velther could respond, the Vraks attacked. Plasma fire erupted across space. His shields absorbed the first volley, but barely. The ship rocked violently. Return fire! Evasive maneuvers. Velther gripped his armrests as the battle began. The fight was brutal. Vrak ships moved with terrifying speed. They didn't use tactics, just raw aggression. One of Velther's destroyers exploded, its crew of 200 gone in an instant. Another ship lost shields and limped away, trailing debris. Commander, we need to retreat now, Kreshna urged. Velther's mind raced through calculations. If they ran, 3 more ships would die before they escaped. If they fought, maybe 4 ships would die. Either way, the math was bad. Then Hyan's voice cut through again. Velther, I have a plan. But you won't like it. Tell me. The Vrak's flagship, the big one in the center. Its shields are strong, but our sensors show a weak point near the engines. If we can get past their defensive fire and hit that spot, their shields will collapse. Then your dreadnought can destroy it. How do we get past their defenses? Velther asked, though he already knew the answer. His stomach turned cold. Fighters. Small, fast, hard to hit. We draw their fire while slipping through. Your fighters are damaged. They won't survive the Vrak's point defense systems. Hyan's voice was calm. I know. Then I cannot allow it. I will not order your people to die. You're not ordering us, Commander. We're volunteering. Velther looked at the tactical display. Another one of his ships took critical damage. In minutes, it would be destroyed. Hundreds more would die. The humans offered a chance, however slim. Captain Hyan, someone has to do it, Hyan interrupted. Might as well be us. We didn't survive our ship exploding just to hide when things get dangerous. Before Velther could argue further, 6 human pilots launched in their broken fighters. He watched his screens in horror as they accelerated toward the Vrak's flagship. The enemy's defensive weapons opened fire immediately. Space filled with plasma bolts. The first human fighter exploded. Pilot Donghae died instantly. Velther's claws dug into his armrests. The second fighter took a direct hit. Pilot Sora managed to eject, but her escape pod drifted into the debris field. Velther dispatched a rescue ship, but he knew she probably wouldn't make it. Pull back. Velther shouted into the CUM. This is suicide. All warfare is suicide if you think about it too much, Jinwoo's voice responded. Just be ready to fire, Commander. The remaining 4 fighters split into pairs. They flew in patterns that made no sense to Velther's tactical training. They should have been trying to survive, to minimize risk. Instead, they flew directly into the heaviest fire. Then Velther understood. Pilots Donghae and Sora hadn't died randomly. They had deliberately drawn fire, their ships acting as shields for the others. They had sacrificed themselves to protect their comrades. The third fighter, piloted by Yuna, lost an engine. Instead of retreating, she pushed forward faster, her damaged craft smoking. I'm hit. Using emergency thrust. Yuna, eject. Hyan's voice commanded. Not yet. Almost there. The fourth fighter exploded. Only 2 remain now. Jinwoo and Yuna pushing through impossible fire. Velther could barely watch. These humans were dying for his fleet. For people they'd known for only 3 days. It made no sense. His people would never. We're through. Jinwoo shouted. Firing now. Both fighters unleashed their remaining missiles at the Vrax flagship's weak point. The shields flickered and collapsed. Target their engines. Velther commanded his weapons officer. Fire everything. The Eternal Watcher's main cannon charged and fired. The beam of energy struck the Vrax flagship's exposed engines. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship erupted in a massive explosion. Debris scattered across space like deadly rain. The remaining Vrax ships hesitated. Their flagship was gone. Their invincible formation was broken. They turned and fled, disappearing into the nebula as quickly as they had appeared. Velther's bridge erupted in cheers, but he felt no joy. Only grief. Get me a count on the human fighters. Krishna's voice was quiet. 2 escape pods detected. Jinwoo and Yuna, both barely alive. The others? They're gone, Commander. 4 humans dead. 4 people who had volunteered to die so others could live. Velther had seen many battles, but he had never witnessed anything like this. He went to the medical bay immediately. Jinwoo and Yuna lay on beds, their bodies covered in burns and injuries. They should have been screaming in pain. Instead, Yuna looked up at him with tired eyes. Did it work? She asked, her voice weak. Yes, Velther said softly. The Vrax are gone. You saved us. Yuna smiled slightly. Good. Then they didn't die for nothing. Velther stared at her. She had nearly died. Her friends were dead. And she smiled because the mission succeeded? That night, the humans held a brief ceremony for their fallen. They spoke about Donghei's terrible jokes and Sora's love of spicy food. They cried, but not for long. Then they returned to their duties. Velther couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what he'd witnessed. The Quilarians would mourn such losses for months. They would question every decision. But the humans? They mourned quickly and moved forward. He realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans had calculated the odds just like he had. They knew they would probably die. And they went anyway. That wasn't bravery. That was something else entirely. Something Velther was only beginning to understand. Velther couldn't stop thinking about the battle. 4 humans had died, and he needed to understand why. Not just how the battle happened, but why the humans had chosen to sacrifice themselves. The question kept him awake at night. He began studying everything he could find about humans. Their history files, their cultural records, their literature. What he discovered both terrified and fascinated him. Earth, the human homeworld, was classified as a Category 9 death world. The gravity was punishing. The weather was violent and unpredictable. The planet was filled with creatures designed to kill. Diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Natural disasters that destroyed cities. And yet, humans not only survived, but thrived. Commander, you wanted to see me? Engineer Minji entered his office, looking curious. Velther gestured to a chair. Yes, I have questions about your people. Specifically, about your history. Minji sat down, looking slightly uncomfortable. What do you want to know? Your planet tried to kill you at every turn. Why did you not leave when you developed space travel? Minji laughed softly. Because Earth is home, Commander. Sure, it's dangerous. But it made us what we are. We learned to adapt or die. We learned to work together or starve. We learned that giving up meant extinction. But you also fought each other, Velther said, pulling up historical records. Wars, genocides, weapons designed to destroy your own cities. I read about something called nuclear bombs that could kill millions. Minji's smile faded. Yeah, we're not proud of that part of our history. We nearly destroyed ourselves a few times. But we learned. Every generation tried to be better than the last. We made mistakes, terrible ones, but we kept trying to improve. Your people seem to have two natures, Velther observed. You can be incredibly violent or incredibly compassionate. Sometimes both at the same time. We're complicated, Minji agreed. We're apex predators who learn to hunt each other, then learn to stop. We have instincts that tell us to fight, but we also have something else. Empathy. The ability to imagine what others feel. It makes us do crazy things. Velther leaned forward. Explain. Minji thought for a moment. On Earth, there's a job called a firefighter. When buildings burn, firefighters run inside to save people. They run toward danger while everyone else runs away. They know they might die, but they do it anyway because someone needs help. This is considered normal on your world. It's considered heroic. We celebrate people who sacrifice for others. Soldiers who protect the weak. Parents who give everything for their children. Ordinary people who do extraordinary things. It's woven into our culture. That evening, Medical Officer Nari brought Velther a datapad. Minji said you were interested in human culture. I thought you might want to read some of our stories. Velther spent the next several hours reading. Stories of soldiers who died protecting their comrades. Scientists who tested dangerous vaccines on themselves. Explorers who ventured into the unknown, knowing they might never return. Tales of ordinary people facing impossible odds and refusing to surrender. One story particularly struck him. 300 soldiers defending a narrow pass against an army of thousands. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway to give their people time to escape. They all died, but they became legends. This actually happened? Velther asked Nari the next day. Yes, thousands of years ago. We still tell the story because it represents something important to us. The idea that one person can make a difference, even if it costs everything. Velther struggled to understand. But they died. They failed to survive. They succeeded in protecting others, Nari corrected. To us, that's not failure. That's the highest form of success. Over the following days, Velther watched his crew interact with the humans. His tactical officer, Kreshna, spent hours with Taiyang, learning human combat strategies. His warriors trained with human soldiers, discovering that what humans lacked in strength. They compensated with adaptability and determination. One afternoon, Velther found Jinwoo teaching a class of young Quilarian pilots. The human, still recovering from his injuries, stood in front of a group of students twice his size. The trick is not to think about dying, Jinwoo explained. If you think about all the ways you can die, you'll freeze up. Instead, focus on what you need to do. Complete the mission. Protect your wingman. Hit the target. Let training take over. But what about fear? One of the students asked. Jinwoo grinned. Fear is good. Fear keeps you sharp. The key is to make fear your passenger, not your driver. You acknowledge it, then you do the job anyway. Velther stayed after the class ended. You make it sound simple. It's not simple at all, Jinwoo admitted. Every time I climb into a fighter, I'm terrified. My hands shake. My heart pounds. I think about all the things that could go wrong. But I've learned that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway. Why? Velther asked the question that had haunted him. Why do it if you're so afraid? Jinwoo looked out the window at the stars. Because if I don't, who will? If everyone who was afraid refused to act, nothing would ever get done. Someone has to step up. Someone has to try. And if I can do it, maybe I can inspire someone else to be brave when they need to be. That night, Velther confided in Captain Hyan. They sat in the observation deck, watching stars drift past. My people fight to minimize loss, Velther said quietly. We calculate risks. We retreat when necessary. We believe survival is the highest priority because dead warriors can't protect anyone. That's wise, Hyan said. But your people fight to win. You accept casualties as necessary. You volunteer for missions that will likely kill you. I don't understand the difference between bravery and foolishness. Hyan was quiet for a long moment. Neither do we sometimes. The line between brave and stupid is pretty thin. But I think it comes down to purpose. If you're risking your life for something meaningless, that's foolish. If you're risking your life to protect others, to achieve something important, that's brave. 4 of your people died to save my fleet. Yes. Was it worth it? Hyan looked at him with those steady eyes. You saved 47 of us when you could have left us to die. You offered us shelter and safety. When my people chose to fight, they were repaying the kindness. They were protecting new friends. Was it worth it? Ask the 2,000 crew members on your ships who are alive because of what they did. Velther felt something shift inside him. He had been thinking about the deaths, but not about the lives saved. The human perspective was different. They measured success not by who survived, but by what was accomplished. My people would never make such a sacrifice for strangers, Velther admitted. Maybe not, Hyan said. But maybe they could learn. We're not special, Commander. We're just too stubborn to quit, and too loyal to abandon our friends. Any species could do what we do. They just have to care enough to try. Velther thought about his own people. The Quilarians were intelligent, strategic, and careful. But were they brave? Could they be? Perhaps wisdom is knowing when to calculate and when to simply act, Velther said slowly. Hyan smiled. Now you're starting to think like a human. Velther wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. But he knew one thing. He would never see the humans the same way again. They weren't weak or fragile. They were something far more dangerous. They were unbreakable. And soon, very soon, Velther would need that human stubbornness. Because the Vrax were coming back, and this time they would bring an army. The distress call came during dinner. Velther was sharing a meal with Captain Hyan when the emergency beacon activated across every screen in the mess hall. The message was simple and terrifying. Outpost Meridian was under attack. Velther ran to the bridge with Hyan close behind. The tactical display showed a nightmare. 40 Vrax warships surrounded the outpost, a joint colony housing 2 million civilians from 6 different species. Among them were thousands of human colonists. How long until reinforcements arrive? Velther asked. Krashana worked her console frantically. 3 weeks minimum, Commander. The nearest fleet is engaged on the other side of the sector. How long can the outpost hold? 3 days. Maybe 4 if they're lucky. Velther stared at the numbers. His fleet had only 12 ships. Against 40 Vrax warships, the mathematics were brutal. Military doctrine was clear. Retreat and wait for reinforcements. Sacrificing his fleet wouldn't save the outpost. It would just mean more deaths. But before he could give the order to retreat, Hyan spoke. We're going in. Velther turned to her. Captain, this is not a debate. We cannot win this battle. Maybe not, Hyan agreed. But we can try. 2 million people, Velther. 2 million civilians who will die if we don't help them. And my fleet will die trying to save them. Then no one wins. Hyan stepped closer, her voice intense. Then no one wins? Listen to yourself. You're already accepting defeat. Those people down there haven't given up. They're fighting right now, buying time they hope will matter. And you want to abandon them? I want my people to survive. Your people became warriors to protect others, Hyan said quietly. What good is survival if you only save yourself? The bridge fell silent. Every Quilarian officer watched the exchange. Velther felt torn between logic and something else. Something the humans had taught him. Taiyang spoke up from his station. Commander, we've been studying Vrax tactics. They're aggressive but predictable. If we use unconventional strategies, we might create an opening for evacuation. Might, Velther repeated. How many ships will we lose? Most of them, Taiyang admitted. But some civilians will survive. Isn't that worth it? Velther looked around his bridge. At Kreshna, who had served with him for 12 years. At his weapons officer, who had a mate and children waiting at home. At his crew, who trusted him to keep them alive. Then he looked at Hyan, at the human who had taught him that survival wasn't the only thing that mattered. Set course for Outpost Meridian, Velther ordered. All ships, battle alert. We're going to fight. His crew moved immediately to obey. Velther saw relief on some faces, fear on others. He felt both emotions himself. Hyan touched his arm gently. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Velther said. We still have to survive this. The journey took 18 hours. During that time, Velther and his officers planned their assault. The humans contributed ideas that made Quilarian tactical doctrine seem like children's games. Risky, dangerous, brilliant ideas. When they arrived, the battle was already raging. The Vrax had breached the outpost's outer defenses. Evacuation ships tried to escape, but were being shot down. Velther watched one explode, taking 500 civilians with it. All ships, attack Formation Omega, Velther commanded. Target their flanking vessels. Make them notice us. His fleet charged into the battle like a blade into flesh. The Vrax turned to face this new threat, their weapons blazing. Velther's seals absorbed the first volley, but the strain was immediate. Shields at 60%, Kreshna reported. Hold position. Launch fighters. The battle became chaos within minutes. Vrax ships were everywhere, their weapons tearing into his fleet. One of his destroyers exploded. Another lost engines and drifted helplessly. The numbers were overwhelming. Then the humans showed Velther what they truly were. Pilot Junho, flying a damaged fighter, spotted a Vrax destroyer preparing to fire on an evacuation ship. Without hesitation, he aimed his fighter directly at the destroyer's bridge and accelerated to maximum speed. Junho, what are you doing? Velther shouted. Buying time, Commander. Tell my family I love them. The fighter struck the destroyer's bridge like a missile. Both vessels exploded in a massive fireball. The evacuation ship escaped. Velther felt sick. Another human, dead to save others. But the sacrifices were just beginning. Engineer Nari led a boarding team onto a Vrax ship, fighting through impossible odds to sabotage its reactor. She succeeded, destroying the ship from within. Her team died, but the Vrax lost a capital ship. Marine Sungho held a critical corridor on Velther's flagship when Vrax boarding parties breached the hull. Velther watched security footage of the human wounded and bleeding, standing over fallen Quilarian crew members. Vrax warriors, twice his size with natural armor, charged at him. Sungho was terrified. Velther could see it in his eyes. But the human didn't retreat. He held the line, his rifle firing until it ran empty. Then he used his combat knife. Then his bare hands. When reinforcements arrived, they found Sungho unconscious but alive. Surrounded by dead Vrax warriors, the battle raged for hours. Velther's fleet was being destroyed piece by piece. They had saved maybe 12,000 civilians, but millions remained trapped. Then Captain Hyan made contact. Velther, I have a plan. The New Dawn is still in your cargo bay, right? Yes, but it's barely functional. It still has a reactor. If we overload it and pilot the ship into the center of the Vrax formation, the explosion will cripple their fleet. Create a gap for the evacuation. Velther understood immediately. Someone would have to stay on the ship until the last second to ensure detonation. No, I won't allow it. You don't have to allow it, Hyan said. I'm doing it anyway. Taiyang is coming with me. We'll need someone to handle navigation while I manage the reactor. Hyan, please. There has to be another way. There isn't. You know it, I know it. This is the only chance those people have. Valther wanted to argue, to order her to stop, to find any other solution. But he had learned to think like the humans now. Sometimes the only choice was an impossible one. You've taught me much, Captain Hyan, Valther said, his voice breaking slightly. About bravery, about duty, about what it means to truly protect others. Then honor what we've taught you, Hyan replied. Get those people out, Commander. That's an order from a friend. Valther watched on his screens as the damaged New Dawn launched from his cargo bay. Hyan and Taiyang broadcast on open channels, drawing Vrak's fire away from evacuation ships. The old colony vessel accelerated into the enemy formation, weapons firing, shields flaring. Every Vrak ship turned to face this new threat. They poured fire into the New Dawn, but somehow it kept coming. Valther could hear Hyan and Taiyang shouting coordinates to each other, their voices steady despite the chaos. Reactor at critical, Hyan announced. Valther, it's been an honor. The honor was mine, Valther whispered. The New Dawn reached the center of the Vrak's formation and exploded. The detonation was massive, a new star born and dying in seconds. 20 Vrak ships were caught in the blast, their shields overwhelmed. 15 more were heavily damaged, the surviving Vrak's vessels. Finally realizing they faced an enemy that refused to surrender, turned and fled. Valther's fleet, battered and broken, limped toward the outpost. They had saved 12,000 civilians. Not nearly enough, but 12,000 people who would live because humans had chosen to die. As rescue operations began, Valther stood alone on his bridge. He thought about Hyan's last words, about Junho ramming that destroyer, about Nari sabotaging the reactor, about Sumho holding the line. He finally understood what humans meant by bravery. It wasn't about being fearless. It was about being terrified and doing what needed to be done anyway. It was about choosing others over yourself, again and again, even when no one would blame you for running. The humans had taught him well, and he would make sure their sacrifice meant something. 3 weeks after the Battle of Outpost Meridian, the reinforcement fleet finally arrived. Valther stood on what remained of his bridge, now patched with emergency repairs, and watched the massive warships take up defensive positions. The Vraks had been pushed back beyond the rim. The immediate threat was over, but the cost haunted him every day. His fleet had started with 12 ships. Only 7 survived. Of his original crew of 14,000, 9,000 remained. And the humans, those remarkable, stubborn, impossible. Humans had been reduced from 47 to 18 survivors. Captain Hyan was gone. Taiyang was gone. Junho, Nari, and so many others. Dead because they chose to fight for people they barely knew. Valther wrote his report on the battle in his private quarters. His claws moved slowly across the datapad, each word feeling inadequate. How could he explain what he had witnessed? How could he make the Galactic Military Command understand what these humans had taught him? In the end, he wrote the truth. Every sacrifice. Every impossible act of courage. Every moment when humans had looked at death and chosen to act anyway. The report was read by commanders across the galaxy. Within days, it became required study at the Quilarian War Academy. 1 month after the battle, the Galactic Council held a memorial ceremony. Representatives from 6 species gathered on Outpost Meridian to honor those who had fallen. 12,000 civilians stood in the rebuilt plaza, alive because others had died for them. Valther was asked to speak about Captain Hyan and Taiyang. He stood at the podium looking out at the crowd and felt completely unprepared. What could he say that would capture who they were? He remembered something Medical Officer Yumbi had shared with him. An ancient human poem about warriors who gave their today for our tomorrow. He read it to the assembled crowd, his voice breaking on certain words. When he finished, the plaza was silent. Then, slowly, the humans in the audience began to clap. Not the polite applause of ceremony, but something deeper. A recognition, an acknowledgement that their people had been seen and understood. After the ceremony, Velther spoke with the surviving humans. They were different now. The loss of so many friends had changed them. But they hadn't broken. What will you do now? Velther asked Yumbi. The medical officer looked at the rebuilding outpost. Stay, I think. These people need doctors. I'm not leaving them. Jinwoo, still recovering from his injuries, grinned weakly. The Quilarian military offered me a job. Flight instructor. They want me to teach your pilots to fly like humans. And you accepted? Of course. Someone needs to pass on what we've learned. Besides, Jonho would haunt me if I wasted this chance to make a difference. Minji had already started working with Quilarian engineers, revolutionizing their approach to repairs and improvisation. Seungho, despite his wounds, was organizing a new special operations unit, combining human tactics with Quilarian strategy. The humans weren't just surviving, they were teaching, spreading their philosophy of stubborn courage to every species they encountered. 2 months later, Velther received an invitation to visit Earth. He accepted, curious to see the world that had produced such remarkable people. The journey took 3 weeks. When he arrived, he was struck by how beautiful and dangerous the planet was. Massive oceans that could swallow ships, mountains that touched the clouds, weather systems that could destroy cities. And yet, humans lived everywhere, adapting to every environment. He met Hyan's family in a small house near the ocean. Her parents, elderly but dignified, welcomed him with warmth. Her younger brother, Daoyun, showed him photos of Hyan as a child. She always wanted to explore space, Daoyun said, pointing to a picture of young Hyan staring at the stars. Even as a kid, she talked about seeing new worlds and meeting new people. She got her wish. I am so sorry for your loss, Velther said quietly. She died saving my fleet. Hyan's mother touched his arm gently. Please don't apologize, Commander. Our daughter died doing what she loved. She protected others. She made a difference. What more could any parent hope for their child? Velther struggled to understand. You are not angry? You do not blame me for taking her into danger? Hyan's father smiled sadly. We didn't take her anywhere. She chose her path. She chose to be brave. We're proud of her, Commander. She lived a short life, but it was a meaningful one. That matters more than the number of years. Dohan walked Velther down to the beach. They stood watching the waves crash against the shore. My sister used to say that humans aren't special, Daoyun said. That any species could do what we do. Do you think that's true? Velther thought carefully. I believe any species has the capacity for courage. But your people have made it part of your culture. You celebrate those who sacrifice. You tell stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. You teach each generation to value others over themselves. That makes you. Not special, perhaps, but remarkable. She'd like that answer, Daoyun said with a small smile. Will you teach your people what she taught you? I already have, Velther replied, and I will continue until my last day. 6 months after the battle, the Galactic Council established the Hyan Taiyang Award for Valor. It would be given to individuals from any species who exemplified human courage, who chose to act despite fear, who protected others at great personal cost. The first recipient was Commander Velther. He stood before the council, dozens of species watching, and accepted the medal. In his acceptance speech, he spoke honestly. I thought I knew bravery. I had fought in many battles. I had faced danger many times. but I measured bravery by survival. If you lived, you were brave. If you died, you had failed. The humans taught me I was wrong. Bravery is not about living or dying. It is about choosing what matters more than your own survival. It is about looking at impossible odds and trying anyway. It is about being terrified and doing your duty regardless. He paused, looking at the human delegation in the audience. Jinwoo sat there in his new military uniform. Yunbi wore doctor's robes. Minji had grease on her hands from working on ships until the last minute. Seungho stood at attention despite his injuries. I fought beside humans, Velther continued, and they changed me forever. They showed me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than fear. They showed me that one person can make a difference, even if it costs everything. They showed me what it truly means to be brave. The applause was thunderous, but Velther barely heard it. He was thinking about Hyan, about her last words, about the promise he had made to honor what she had taught him. Years passed. Velther continued to serve, but he was a different commander now. He trained his crews in human tactics. He taught them about duty beyond survival, about courage in the face of fear. The Quilarian military evolved, incorporating human philosophy into their doctrine. Other species noticed. The humans' reputation spread across the galaxy. They became known not for their technology or their strength, but for their unbreakable spirit, for their refusal to give up, for their willingness to sacrifice for others. New species, encountering humans for the first time, would often make the same mistake Velther had made. They would see the soft bodies, the short lifespans, the lack of natural weapons. They would underestimate humanity. Then they would witness human courage, and they would learn. Velther kept a small memorial in his quarters. Names of the humans who had died under his command. Hyan, Taiyang, Junho, Sora, Dongha, Nari, and others. He would visit it each day, remembering their faces, their voices, their impossible bravery. One evening, Admiral Jinwoo visited him. The former pilot had risen quickly through the ranks, his tactical innovations changing galactic warfare. Still keeping the vigil? Jinwoo asked, looking at the memorial. Always, Velther replied. They deserve to be remembered. They'd probably tell you to stop being so serious and get some sleep, Jinwoo said with a grin. Hyan especially. She hated when people got too sentimental. Velther allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps I made a promise. To honor what they taught me. To never forget. You've done more than that, Jinwoo said. You've changed the galaxy. The Quilarians fight differently now. Other species are learning from humans. The Vraks think twice before attacking anyone because they know we'll all fight back. That's because of you. Because you listened and learned. I simply paid attention to good teachers. Jinwoo placed a hand on Velther's shoulder. You know what Hyan would say? She'd say you were always capable of this. That humans didn't teach you to be brave. We just reminded you of what you already knew. That night, Velther made his final log entry before retiring. He was old now, even for a Quilarian. His scales had faded. His claws had dulled. But his mind was sharp, and his memories were clear. I have fought beside the greatest warriors in the galaxy, he recorded. I have witnessed acts of courage that defy comprehension, but I thought I understood bravery. I thought it was about tactics, about calculated risks, about surviving to protect others another day. I was wrong. Humans taught me the truth. Bravery is knowing you will probably die and doing what is right anyway. It is choosing others over yourself, again and again, even when no one would blame you for running. It is being terrified and acting regardless. I thought I knew bravery. I was a fool. But I fought beside humans, and they taught me what it truly means to.